So we're going to be looking in Ephesians chapter 6. So if you want to turn there, that's where we will be. So, Ephesians chapter 6, and we will begin in verse 10, and we'll read this section here. Finally, be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his might. Put on the full armor of God so that you will be able to stand firm against the schemes of the devil. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the powers, against the world forces of this darkness, against the spiritual forces of wickedness in the heavenly places. Therefore, is that too loud? How's that? Is that better? Okay. So just before the white. Therefore, take up the full armor of God, so that you will be able to resist in the evil day. And having done everything to stand firm therefore, having girded your loins with truth, and having put on the breastplate of righteousness, and having shod your feet with the preparation of the gospel of peace. In addition to all, taking up the shield of faith, which you will be able to extinguish all the flaming arrows of the evil one, and take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. With all prayer and petition, pray at all times in the Spirit, and with this in view, be on the alert with all perseverance and petition for all the saints. And pray on my behalf, that utterance may be given to me in the opening of my mouth, to make known with boldness the mystery of the gospel, for which I am an ambassador in chains, that in proclaiming it I may speak boldly as I ought to speak. Okay. Is it on?
Yeah, so
okay.
I was texting Rebecca. I think she turned it up in there. So I think she's turned it back down now. So maybe you want to turn it back up again.
Okay.
Sound check.
Okay, sound check. Does that sound pretty good? Sound pretty good? All right. All right. Okay. So, hopefully you were able to listen there while we had those issues. But this is probably a familiar passage to us all, and it deals with what we would say the armor of God. But before we really deal with that, I think there's some other things that we need to talk about here. And I think, obviously, Paul addresses them here. So, what is the purpose of this armor that he goes on to talk about? What's it for?
Stand against the wiles of the devil.
Okay, to stand against the wiles of the devil. That's what he says, right? And then he goes on there and he describes what? Right after that there.
Spiritual warfare.
Okay, a spiritual battle, right? He's talking about these forces. So, for us to engage in this battle, what is necessary? We must know the enemy, right? That's what Paul's telling us. We're to put on the armor for a purpose, to withstand the wiles or the schemes of the devil. And there's a battle that's being engaged in here with spiritual forces, right? That's what he says there. So, I think it is imperative for us to understand and to lay hold of, as best we can here, the fact of this spiritual warfare. It isn't a question of whether there will be a warfare or whether the Christian is in some sort of battle here, right? I mean, Paul just says, this is the case. This is the reality. Okay? It's an unseen reality. right? That's a spiritual warfare. It's a spiritual battle. This armor that we're to take on, is it a physical armor? No. He talks about the shield of faith, right? Belt of truth, these things. This is not a physical piece of armor that we're going to put on our bodies, but it's a spiritual armor. And so it's a spiritual battle. So it's essential that we understand that we are engaged in a spiritual warfare and that our struggle is not against flesh and blood. So Paul makes it real clear, right? He says flesh and blood. What's he mean by that? Human, right? Humanly speaking. He's not speaking there of flesh as he speaks of flesh in Romans and things like that in these other passages, but he's speaking flesh and blood. So it's not a physical battle. It is a spiritual battle. What does it look like? So what do we mean by a spiritual battle or a spiritual enemy? And what does that look like? What do we when we talk about the unseen realm, when we talk about these unseen forces, when we talk about a spiritual warfare or a spiritual battle, what do we think about? What does that look like in our lives? When we're walking through this world, or in the morning we're reading our Bible and we're talking about some spiritual battle, what comes to our minds? What are some things that we think about? Anybody?
Warring against sin.
Okay, warring against sin.
Just being distracted while you're reading.
Okay, distractions from our goal there in the morning or whatever when we're reading. But how is that? So that, okay, that's good, that's
I
fine.
guess I think of that as warfare because Satan doesn't want you to sit down
Sure.
and spend time with the Lord, so he's going to do everything he can to distract you. And sometimes, some days are harder than others, I think.
Okay.
Just in my own experience.
Okay, so a guarding of our minds, our focusing our attention upon the Lord at those times and not being distracted. Okay, good. That's good. Anything else?
Meeting with the saints.
How so?
So, like, we take for us, for instance, tonight, we could have chosen to stay home because we had a long day flying, but it's important for us to be here, and that is a battle that we have to fight of what's important and what's not important.
Okay.
What is important being with the saints, and there's ample things to thwart that attempt.
Okay. I think that's good. I think that's a good... I don't know that I would say that's... I mean, I guess it is spiritual in a sense, for sure. Okay? So that's good. I mean, it's definitely a good thought, right? I mean, that's our daily life. Are we going to choose this over this? Am I going to choose the flesh over the spirit? Things like that. So good. Anything else? What else comes to mind?
Have we already said just like battling thoughts?
Okay.
Like a lot of spiritual warfare seems like it happens in our mind.
In the mind. Okay. Yes, I would say absolutely. What are those things? What are some of those things that are spiritual warfare?
Wrong thinking.
Okay, wrong thinking, such as...
I mean, anything that doesn't please the Lord.
Okay.
That could be harmful to the church or yourself.
Okay, so what are some things that we could say there specifically? We could say temptations, right? We could just say any temptation to think incorrectly. So we could talk about doubts, right? Doubting God, doubting His Word, doubting who He is. That's a spiritual warfare. That's a spiritual battle that we have to engage in. So temptation, doubts. What else? We could talk about fears. We could talk about living a life of fear. We could talk about anxiety. We could talk about depression. We could talk about discouragement. Okay, those are a few things that I wrote down here that are things that we have to engage in on a spiritual level. So we have to guard our minds. We have to keep ourselves from thinking in an unbiblical way. So, a spiritual battle. One thing that I think is helpful to think about here, and we'll deal with it probably more later on, but who's read Spiritual Depression by Lloyd Jones? Anybody? Okay. It's a great book, right? It talks about this spiritual warfare quite a bit. And one of the things that he talks about there is anything that would cause us to take our eyes off of Christ. He talks about Peter there walking on the water. And what was Peter's problem? He takes this great leap of faith, right? And he says, Lord, tell me to come to you. And he says, come on out. So he gets on the water, and what happens? He takes his eyes off of Christ. He begins to look at the waves, and he begins to sink. He begins to fear. Okay? So we could talk about this spiritual warfare, this spiritual battle. We could talk about anything that would cause us to take our eyes off of Christ and to doubt or to fear or any of those such things. So a spiritual battle, a spiritual warfare that we are engaged in. It's important that we understand that that is the case. What is another thing that Paul seems to point out here with regard to this battle and who we're warring against? What is a characteristic of this warfare, or this one that we're warring against, I should say? Anything stand out to anybody there about who it is?
Looking for the darkness.
Okay. Well, what's he say about those things? What's the description that he gives them? If we could just, again, if you're not thinking along the same lines as me, it's going to be hard. But I'm thinking he seems to, he's telling us here that it's powerful. Do you see that? That these aren't just some weak, measly little things that we're dealing with here. But what does he say? He says, well, I mean, first of all, he says, in order to do this, we've got to be strong in the Lord. So that implies it's going to require some strength. And so what we're fighting against must be strong, right? In the strength of his might, or if you have the King James, the power. Is it power of his might? Okay, so again, that's what's required. That's what's needed in this warfare. Some powerful things are needed here. And then he goes on and he talks about the schemes of the devil, which we'll deal with in a little bit here. But then he says, rulers against powers, forces of darkness. Okay, again, that seems to be what? A pretty not admirable. What's the word? Formidable foe. Okay? That's what we're dealing with here. We're not just dealing with some weak, creaturely thing here, but we're dealing with some powerful forces. Okay? Some real strong beings. Spiritual beings. So rulers, powers, forces of wickedness. Okay? 1 Peter 5:8. Anybody remember that passage? How is Satan described there in 1 Peter 5:8? It's a roaring lion. Okay? So that seems to be telling us here that this is a strong enemy. The roaring lion. It's not just something to be easily dismissed, right? I'm reminded of Daniel 10:13. I was thinking about that here, where he talks about the forces of wickedness, the powers of darkness. In Daniel 10:13, there, it's the story there of the angel being opposed by the prince of Persia. He was coming to give Daniel a message, and he was hindered and opposed by this force, which seems to be a spiritual or demonic force that was a hindrance there, and Michael had to come help him there in order to deliver this message. And so again, the idea there seems to be that there's a great power there. a great force. And he calls him the Prince of Persia. And so we see in that, again, the devil has power on this earth to control men and to deal with nations in that way. So we're not dealing with some small thing here, but it's a serious, powerful darkness. Jude 9. I'll just read that because it's just easy. It's easier to read it than to try to explain it without reading it. So Jude 9, but Michael, the archangel, when he disputed with the devil and argued about the body of Moses, did not dare pronounce against him a railing judgment, but said, the Lord rebuke you. So here's Michael, the archangel, again, a powerful being, right? And he does not even just willy-nilly rebuke Satan, but he says, the Lord rebuke you. Okay? So it's a powerful force, a powerful enemy that we are to withstand, that we are to war against. It's not a small matter. It's not a small thing, and it's not something that we do on our own. All right? We're going to deal with that, I think, later on here. But again, what do we do? Be strong in the Lord and in the power of His might. Power of His might. So, a powerful force is against us, and we are in need of the Lord's help. One other verse here, 2 Corinthians 10. So Paul says, 2 Corinthians 10:3, for though we walk in the flesh, we do not war according to the flesh. For the weapons of our warfare are not of the flesh, but divinely powerful, for the destruction of forces. We are destroying speculations and every lofty thing that raises up against the knowledge of God, and we are taking every thought captive to the obedience of Christ. So again, we see there powerful forces. Destruction of fortresses. Bulwarks is another way you could think of that. Fortresses. That's what we're coming against. That's what we're warring against. Not just some small thing. A formidable foe is who we are warring against. So next, what does he say here? What is something we should pick up? Not only is he powerful, these demons, these forces, these spiritual beings, but he says here that the schemes of the devil or the wiles of the devil. So not only is this a powerful foe that we have to stand against, but it's an intelligent foe that we have to stand against. So wily, crafty, deceitful, trickery, cunning. All right, that's what we're dealing with here. If you've ever gone to war against someone, so to speak, you don't want that guy to be real crafty and cunning and deceitful, right? You want to see what's coming at you. You don't want him taking the back door or sneaking around. You want to see what's coming on, because you're like, if I can see it, I can take it. But that's not Satan. Satan's not giving us the full frontal attack. He's coming around the sides. Okay? It's important for us to understand that. Have you ever thought, I had this thought the other day, why is this really sinful? I mean, is it really sinful, this thing I was thinking about? And I was thinking, I mean, that's right there. That's Satan. I know it's wrong, this thought that I had. But the back of my mind, I'm thinking, is it really? That's a temptation. That's a thought of the devil. That's the deceit of Satan. To take that thing that I know full well is wrong, that I shouldn't do, that I shouldn't think about, that I shouldn't engage in, and all of a sudden question, is it really wrong? Where does that come from? The lies of the devil, right? He's not just coming full on there. He's trying to deceive. He's trying to fool. He's trying to get you to slip up in this one thing. If you can accept that this is okay, I mean, it just snowballs from there. So, he's deceitful. He's wise in that regard, in being wicked and cunning. What else could we say about Satan? I was thinking about this. How about he's bold? Have you ever thought about that? You ever think about the temptations of Jesus? I mean, here's the Son of God, and Satan doesn't care a bit. I'm going to come after him here, and I'm going to try to tempt him. I mean, that's bold. To think that you could do that. To think that you are so good, and to think that you have such power and such craftiness that you're going to deceive even the Son of God. I never thought about it like that, but that's amazing. I mean, if we were to entertain someone giving us some suggestion, right? Just some off-the-wall thing. Somebody comes up to you and says, hey, your brother is blah, 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 blah. Or your wife is whatever. You'd be like, well, are you kidding me right now? Are you really saying that to me as if I'm going to believe you? Who are you? But yet that's Satan. Let me come against you. Let me say this. Let me whisper that. And he does it to the Son of God even. Bold, audacious. Just worship me. If you just worship me, you'll have it all. What a claim. What if he's willing to do that to the Son of God? What is he not willing to do to us? What temptation, what thought is he not willing to whisper in our ear? It's limitless, right? Anything that he can, he will. All right. Another example of just the wickedness, of the evil, the power, Luke 8:12. So that's the story of the sower, and in one of those where the seed is scattered, there it says that the devil takes away the word, so that they will not believe. Consider that. So here you've heard some good things. Maybe you've heard some things on a Sunday morning, Wednesday night. Maybe just some conversation with somebody. You've heard some truth. What's the devil's goal? Take that away. Let me distract you. Let me put another thought into your mind. Was he that preacher really wasn't having your good in mind? He was calling you out from the pulpit. Ignore all those things. That was mean. He was wrong. Right? You name it. Any suggestion. Now, again, that's not exactly what that passage is talking about. They're taking the word, but that is true nonetheless. The devil seeks to take the word that we hear, pervert it, ruin it, and cause us to reject it. Ephesians 4:27. We're right here. I'll read it. And do not give the devil an opportunity. So, verse 26, be angry and yet do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger. And do not give the devil an opportunity. What do we see there? The devil's looking for every opportunity to cause us to sin, to cause us to stumble, and to cause our faith to be shipwrecked. That's his goal. Who are we? We used to be his, and he wants us back. I never did read all of Bunyan's other book. What is it? The Holy War. And the city of Mansoul. But I read the first half of it or so, and the whole goal, he wanted it back. He wants it back. He wants us back. And so he's going to seek every opportunity to draw us back, to cause us to sin, to sow those seeds of doubt that we're really not Christians, we're really not the Lord's, he really doesn't love us, he really doesn't care for us, and so on. Don't give him the opportunity. Don't give him any opportunity to cause us to sin. 2 Timothy 2:26. This kind of goes along with that. I'll read it. Uh, 25, with gentleness correcting those who are in opposition, if perhaps God may grant them repentance, leading to the knowledge of the truth, and they may come to their senses and escape from the snare of the devil, having been held captive by him to do his will. So again, just the whole idea there of who the devil is. He has ensnared and captured men and desires to keep them, and he desires us to fall into sin and to live lives that are not pleasing to the Lord. That's his goal. And then Revelation 2:10 again just speaks of, here I'll just read it, of those powers on earth that would, through the devil's leading, cause us harm. Revelation 2:10. John's here speaking to the churches. Do not fear what you are about to suffer. Behold, the devil is about to cast some of you into prison, so that you will be tested, and you will have tribulation for 10 days. Be faithful until death, and I will give you the crown of life. So again, just the idea there that Satan, he is influential in this world, and his goal is to shipwreck our faith, and he will use all means necessary, whether that's men or spiritual things that we've already mentioned. So I'd like to read this to you. So I got this from Thayer when I was looking up some things. So he says, Satan, this is when he was giving a definition of the devil. Thayer's Greek English lexicon. Satan, the prince of demons, the author of evil, persecuting good men, estranging mankind from God and enticing them to sin, and afflicting them with diseases by means of demons who take possession of their bodies at his bidding, the malignant enemy of God and the Messiah. So that was his description of Satan. I think it's good. I think it's something to think about there. All of those things that Satan desires to do and to the ways that he can do it. This is our enemy. This is the one that we are warring against, him and his minions. All right? So, if we are to engage in this warfare, we must know who it is that we're engaging. We must know that he's powerful. We must know his tactics. We must know a little bit about him if we are going to engage. Now, the other thing that Paul says here is we wrestle. Verse 12. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, or in the King James, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood. Has anybody ever wrestled? You ever wrestled your brothers? Okay. What's it require?
Strength.
Okay, it requires strength. What else does it require?
Skill.
Okay, some skill. If you're going to really be wrestling competing, you got to have some skill, right? Some technique. You got to have strength. What else do you need?
Preparation.
What?
Preparation.
Okay, some preparation. What else? Stamina, some endurance. Okay, that's a big one. If you think about wrestling, I've wrestled some guys too in my day, and it's like you can be the strongest guy in the world. And you start wrestling, and I mean, it's not long. You're like, I am wore out. This is tough, right? You can go hit the gym. I can go hit the gym all day long. But then I'm wrestling around. I remember wrestling some guy in high school, just horsing around in the pool. I was about dead. And I was stronger than him. And I was still about dead. It requires endurance. It requires work. It requires strength and skill. Okay? If we're going to wrestle against these spiritual forces, that's what it's going to take. Okay? It's going to take us enduring. Because what? It's not a one-time thing. It's not just, I was victorious today. Boy, the Lord helped me today. I was strong. I resisted temptation. Those thoughts that came into my mind, I put them out. Boy, it was a great day. I'm ready for glory, right? No, you got tomorrow. You got to do it all over again. And when that same temptation comes, day after day after day, it becomes wearisome. Lord, why? I've fought this all week, and I've been victorious. Can you not allow it anymore? Sometimes the Lord says, yeah, we're done with it. Sometimes not. You got to press on. You got to trust me more. You got to rely upon me more. So, wrestling is difficult. It requires endurance, stamina, strength. Again, it's not our strength, right? We're going to talk about that, but it's not our strength that we're relying upon. What does Paul say? Whose strength is it? It's the Lord's. Be strong in the Lord and in the power of His might. All right. So, we're wrestling here. I think Brian said skill. That's something to think about. That is something to consider. Skill or technique in our wrestling. Okay? What do we do when the temptation comes? What is our plan there? What are we going to do? Have you thought about that? Okay, let's just say, if you have some particular sin that you struggle with, what's the plan? What's the plan when that thing rears its ugly head? Maybe it's fear. Maybe it's some sort of doubt. Maybe it's a temptation towards lust or some other sin. What's the goal there? What's the goal when that comes? What do we do? Is our first thing to run to the Lord? What is it? Do we have a plan? What's your technique in this warfare, in this wrestling? Okay? You've got to come up with something. Because if it's just a matter of, well, I guess I'll deal with it when it comes, yeah, you might be successful at times, but you won't be successful consistently. And it won't be nearly what it could be if we don't have a plan as those things come. Whatever that is, if it's prayer, if it's reciting some Bible verses, if it's calling a friend, calling your wife, I don't know what all is perfect for you. But you need to know. You need to know what's helpful. What is it that helps you to resist those things? How do you withstand the temptations? How do you deal with fears, doubts, anxieties, anger, frustration? You name it. Whatever it is. How do you deal with that? You've got to have a plan. You've got to have a purpose. Again, our enemy does, right? Satan has a plan. He has his techniques. He's wily. He's crafty. What is our plan? Do you have one? All right. Okay. All right. So, any questions about that? Any thoughts? Any questions about our adversary there?
Well, he doesn't have ultimate power.
Okay.
As powerful as he is.
Okay. Dave might be jumping ahead there. I'm not sure. I could have missed it, though.
In the power of his might.
Right.
Right?
Right. No, I just mean, we're going to.
Oh, you're going to use.
Yeah, we might. But again, I was thinking tonight. I was like, well, if we don't get any further, we want to bring that up, right? That's imperative. So remember that. Who is Satan? Ultimately, he's a defeated foe, right? Christ has conquered him. He's conquered him on the cross. He has ascended into heaven and has put all things under his feet. Okay? So, while he is powerful, he is a formidable foe, he is a defeated foe. And the Lord has defeated him. And when we're strong in the Lord and in the power of his might, we are able to overcome. Right? And so that is our encouragement. That is a great encouragement. No temptation hath overtaken you, but such as is common to man. And what? With that temptation, I'll provide a way of escape. So the Lord has promised that. The Lord has defeated Satan. He is a defeated foe. And when we are strong in the Lord and in the power of his might, when we are waging this warfare spiritually through the power of the Spirit, we are able to overcome this spiritual adversary. Okay? So he is defeated, and we are able to overcome. That's part of our warfare, right? That's part of winning the battle. Again, having the proper mindset, having the knowledge. Again, it's not just knowledge, but it's faith that this is true. Okay? When we go on to talk about the shield of faith, we've got to believe that these things are true. If you don't believe it's true, and you don't believe that through the power of God you're able to overcome, and that Satan has been defeated, what hope is there really, right? It's like, well, who am I? Who am I to withstand this adversary? Okay, so we've got to have a right view of that. Okay.
I have one more question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, can we, should we, and how could we distinguish between the temptation in the flesh and the temptation that comes from the devil, or if we're battling against our own flesh, or we're battling against the devil or one of his demons? Is that important that we would know that or not?
So if we're battling against our flesh or the devil or his demons.
Does the temptation come from within or from without? Does that matter?
I don't know that I have an answer for you there. I don't know that it matters. What's our response for either one?
Just about the same.
Yeah, it's close to the same.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what would be the difference. How if I knew that this was just some fleshly appetite, is that what you mean? Some fleshly thing versus the lies of Satan, how do I respond? Do I respond differently? So yeah, I don't know that I have anything in particular that's going to be different. Do you?
I don't know if in the response if it's all that different, but I think it is important that when we're trying to get to know the devil and all the things about him there, then we would expect that his attacks would be probably way more unexpected. Like we expect that we kind of, especially the older we get, we know where our temptations or at least most of our weaknesses, or what, I mean, that's not to say it can't surprise us that we're weak in this area too.
Sure.
But I guess I would just say that there, you know, it's, you know, when we say that he's scheming and he's opportunistic, he's greedy for influence, I think when he schemes, he plays the long game a lot. And then when that opportunity finally comes for him to spring or to lay his trap, that's, I think, the response. In the response, then, it may not be different, but it would be so much better to be able to recognize and to see. And I'm not sure that we always can or we ever can. But I do know that it is helpful, I think, if you know that this thing is not coming from me. I can remember one time working. I was by myself, and there was no doubt in my mind that there was some demon that was, because the thoughts that just came over me and just the darkness. It didn't come. I knew it didn't come from me. And I think if I had thought that it had come from within me, that would have been really scary. And but I knew that it didn't come from within. So I think in that respect, it's in those kinds of situations, it is important that we know that that's not coming from within us. And I just think also that in the battle, at least, the devil is outside of us. And so when in our goings, we should expect that we're going to see him. Dad told me the story that Conrad used to walk around his chapel there and rebuke the devils. Tell them to get away, we're having a meeting here, and that's what he would do. Now, I'm not recommending that. I'm not saying that wasn't legitimate. He thought that it was. I know that on Sunday mornings I pray that the Lord would restrict and hold back the devil and his demons from interfering in the hearts and the minds and in the activities that go on here on Sunday morning. So, I mean, that's different than the temptation from within. You know, it's coming from outside. So I don't know. That's why I was asking what your thoughts were on it. But
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. I think it is. Again, I don't know that there's a different response, so to speak, but it is encouraging to know, as you said, when those terrible things do come, to know that, yeah, this is from Satan. This isn't just me. I mean, that is helpful. I mean, I don't know what everybody else's experiences are, but I've experienced things similar to Dave there, where you really do get kind of a glimpse at evil, at the evil influences and the evil forces that are outside of you. And, it's good to know that those things are outside, that it's not coming from within. So I
have a question. Did you, in verse 12, the end of it, in King James, it says against spiritual wickedness in high places. What exactly does it mean in high places? Did you say something?
I didn't say anything about that yet, no. I don't know that I'm going to. The idea seems to be the spiritual forces of wickedness in the heavenly places. I don't think I wrote it down, but Hodge was just saying wicked forces or the demon, spiritually wicked forces, as in demons, demonic activity. And as far as the heavenly places, I don't really have have much to say there. I haven't really looked into it that much. It doesn't seem to be, again, the heavenly places. Some say it is like our atmosphere of this world. I don't know that that's necessarily accurate, but I don't have an answer for you. I can look into it. I didn't really look into it, that part of verse 12 much.
I had a couple of thoughts and maybe a question. One thought was about how to fighting the temptations. I think I personally have found help in just following Jesus' example of fighting with Scripture. And so, there have just been times it's like if you're struggling with a certain doubt or unbelief or sin that you're needing to deal with, you can just look up verses about that and even write them down, memorize them. I've even, years ago would just write them on an index card so I could just pick it up and read it because it was just such a battle in my mind. So I definitely recommend that. And then Dave's first point he made about the devil not being all powerful. I was thinking while you were talking, I think Becky shared the verses on Sunday about the same power that raised Jesus from the dead dwells in us. And I remember thinking several years ago, it doesn't really feel like that. Like most of the time, it doesn't feel like we have this amazing power. But when you consider how powerful these forces of darkness are, that it really is the powerful Holy Spirit keeping us going and keeping us faithful and helping us battle. So that's just an encouraging thought. And then, I don't know if this is a thought or a question. The other thing, several years ago, I used to always think that when the devil tempted Jesus, when I would read that, I would picture they were standing there talking face to face. And then one time it occurred to me, was the devil just putting thoughts in his mind like he does us? What do you think?
Yeah. I think he was face to face.
He definitely was. Okay. I wasn't sure, but.
So we'll end here, and so my next heading here is to be strong in the Lord. So we'll look at that some more next week, and in the power of His might. I do want to point out. Hopefully we heard what Dave said there as far as knowing ourselves. Okay? I didn't mention that, I don't think. Maybe I did in passing. But that's an important part of the battle. Okay? That we would all know we're all different. Right? Every one of us is different. And so the things that I struggle with are maybe not the things that Brian struggles with. Or Jake or Hannah, whatever. And so if we know ourselves, that's also key to the battle. Okay? If we know, hey, I shouldn't go here, I shouldn't do that, I shouldn't watch this. When somebody starts talking about this, I shouldn't get involved in that. Whatever it might be. I don't know. You know yourself. And so to know yourself is to war. Is to war in a good way, to avoid those things, to deal with those things. If you know you're prone to gossip or you're prone to being bitter, dealing with those things, don't allowing those things to take root, whatever, giving opportunity there. Okay, so know yourself as well. Be honest with yourself. Okay, well that's it.